Hi everybody and welcome to this little time lapse. We've got these eggs by Hayley Owens. I found this on Unsplash. I fell in love with the color of the eggs in this like ice cream bowl. So it's a little bit confusing I guess because it's an ice cream bowl, it's pastel colored eggs, it could look like ice cream. But just by the texture of those eggs, it's super smooth. Whereas if it was ice cream, you would have a lot more texture. So I hope it really does read as eggs rather than ice cream scoops. Anyway, this is small. It's only 18 centimeters by 20 centimeters, and I'm working on the dark gray pastel mat here. I used quite a lot of pastel pencils as well as my new pastels in this one. So you can see I've changed the background. I made it look like it's inside, more of a very typical still life kind of background aesthetic. I used a lot of warm grey in that background as well as a few browns. And I wanted it dark because I wanted the eggs to pop out. That sounds weird. But yeah, I wanted to give more interest and vibrance to the egg. So I thought, let me go dull and dark with the background. However, after doing this, I think, these eggs would also look beautiful with like more of a lighter toned grey background would also work really well. So we are on the edge of spring here in the UK, and I'm pretty sure we're all gasping for more sunshine and flowers in our life. So I think doing these eggs just made me feel so happy. Pastel colors are so spring-like. I think we all associate, pastel colors with spring. It's a very typical palette to have, and I absolutely love it, and I'm all for it. So I used quite a lot of the pastel pencils. You can see I used a mixture of Cretacolor as well as Carbothello, Caran d'Ache, and it was really important to get those edges right because those eggs, it's so distinct. They've got such a hard edge and such a smooth surface. It was really important to make sure that everything looked smooth. So lots of rubbing into the paper. I'm layering a lot, that we've got a lot of pigment on the paper, and also using some of my new pastels. But yeah, it was very important. That's why I chose to use the pastels really. A lot of pastel pencils, I should say, was I really wanted to get nice sharp edges. Well, it's a big mixture actually of sharp edges and soft edges because obviously where the shadow is, some of those are hard edges and some of those are diffuse soft edges. So lots of edge work in this one that I was very conscious of. If I went a bit wonky with the eggs on the top where you can see they're sitting on the background there, if they look jagged or it just wouldn't work. I needed to get those nice crisp edges, and pastel pencil works really well because you've got a nice fine point. Also, as I said, I'm working quite small. This isn't a big piece at all. So the pastel pencils come in a treat, and you can layer up pastel pencils and the pigment will start to move around the paper just like pastel. So you can blend and get such a beautiful softness, as you can see that I'm doing here with the pastel pencils. Using a mixture, you can see in the shadows, we've got some nice grays as well as some pinks and some yellows. And some blues, some beautiful like ultramarine and cobalt blues. So really important, these have got to look three-dimensional. How do we make something look three-dimensional on a two-dimensional surface? Tonal value, and having a difference in the tonal value, having a light, a mid-tone, and a dark, and making sure that our darks are actually dark enough. That is what's going to dictate the form. So I'm really you'll see me going lots backwards and forwards to get these eggs to the place that I'm happy with them. Again, see, really concentrating on my edges. That's the beauty of pastel. You make a mistake, it's really quite easy to correct it. And also building up in layers like this, you can just keep going over. If something doesn't work, like this color didn't really work, it was too light, that's pale magenta I put down, it's not a problem, go over with another pastel. I went over with something that had more pink in it, and then this is like a darker pinky terracotta color that I'm using. Pastel can be so forgiving. The important thing is the paper you're using. So for me, pastel mat is just I mean, I've tried lots of different papers, and I think I'd have to say Pastel Matte's my favorite. I love the effects you can get, the smoothness, how it grips the pastel. There's not a lot of dust fallout. Depending on what pastels you use, some pastels like Castle Earth from Sennelier, it's a beautiful dark reddy brown. But sure, that has a lot of pastel fallout. It's a very gritty pigment. So that has quite a lot of pastel fallout. It's probably the dustiest pastel I own, and I use it quite a lot. But all these others, it literally, the Pastel Matte grips these pigments. I don't like lots of dust fallout. I think it just makes mess, and I just really don't like it. So Pastel Matte for me is a win-win for sure. I love this paper. It's never let me down. When you're working in these layers, this is the paper I would choose for sure, because it can handle all these layers. But back to the actual painting itself. So we got the eggs in, making sure we've really got some lovely cast shadow on there. And for the brightest light part, you can see in the middle of the egg where the sun is literally hitting those eggs. That's the only place that I've used white. Just a little bit of white as well. But I built it up with tinted colors. So you've got some tinted blue, which means it's a blue with a lot of white in. It almost looks white, but you can actually see it's got like a tint of blue. And I used pink and I used green for the green egg in the back. So when doing the glass, it's just a case of really observing your reference photograph. In the glass, you can see there's lots of little abstract shapes. When you just look at not piece by piece, what am I trying to say? When you just don't look at the glass as a whole, just look at it section by section, and you'll see it's like lots of little abstract shapes. And I just copy that to the best of my ability, making sure my tonal value is correct. Now, you think glass, you think transparent, which obviously it is. But when we're creating this on a surface, you've got to make sure that even with glass, you're really going super dark. So, because that is as dark as those reflections in the glass actually are. So sometimes we can think glass and just make it way too light, which is not good enough, because it means your lights aren't going to pop. It's not going to look transparent enough. You know, the glass is transparent, so you can see some of the background through the glass, and this background is particularly dark. You know, in the reference photograph, the background's in shadow against the tree stump, which is really, really dark. That's why you got lots of brown tones coming through the glass. I've kept it similar. It's a brownish gray color, but it's also very dark. So making sure you can see in that glass how it's like a pinky red glass. Look how dark some of those areas are. So even when you're painting something transparent like glass, your darks are dark. And then obviously, because everything's so dark, when you come to put your lights on, suddenly it's going to read as, oh, this is actually glass. But the important thing is looking at your reference photo and just pasteling those abstract shapes as close to as what you can see as possible. So it got some beautiful oranges in there. Like I said, this is like a reddy pink glass, a maroon glass, I guess you could say. So some of those highlights are more on the orange red side of the color wheel, so I'm just adding those in with the Sennelier. I always say this, I'll say it again, if you're wanting that high saturation chroma, Sennelier is just phenomenal. They do such high chroma colors, and it's fantastic for things like highlights and floral art as well. Yeah, I really do love my Senneliers. So when my head's not in the way, it was quite tricky to do this section actually, because we've got some etched glass here. So what I did is I needed to have a dark, so I've got a chocolate brown pastel pencil, and I'm just kind of mapping in. I'm not going exactly as what's in the reference photo, but I'm wanting to get the same feel. It's kind of like a flower motif. So I'm just using the dark chocolate brown to add that in, and then you can see I'm adding a little bit of raw sienna for a little bit of the highlights, and then I go over with white. And that contrast of the white and the chocolate brown is really what makes it pop, and it looks like it's etched glass. So the right side was quite easy, but the left side was a bit more tricky. Those colors were very interesting because obviously you've got the reflection of the pastel pink egg in there mixed in with the maroon of the glass. So it was like a dusty pink reflection in the motif. So that was kind of tricky, but I stuck with it and I just built it up. When it wasn't looking right, I tried to ask myself questions. Why isn't this working? Identifying the problem and then getting a solution for that problem. So always ask yourself questions. If something's not looking quite right, excuse me, ask yourself why. Try and identify the problems and then come in with some solution. Asking yourself questions as you go along is really important and really helpful. So like with the left side, I was like, oh, the color's off. It needs to be more dusky pink. Going around, let's look for a solution. Where's more dusty pinks? Let me add some more pinks here. Not quite dusty enough. Oh, I know. Let me add a bit more raw sienna. That should dust it off a little bit. And therefore just creating solutions for the things that weren't working. So I really enjoyed creating these eggs, and I'll definitely be doing some more eggs in the future. I actually bought some blue eggs, but they got eaten on the weekend because my husband didn't hear me say, those are for my still life. Anyway, there will be more eggs coming to the channel because they are just so much fun to pastel. I really enjoyed it. And I think going with the pastel pencils is it's just been a really good choice, as I said, because I'm working quite small. But of course, the pastel sticks with those punches of color is just working so beautifully. So I guess that's it for this one. But if you enjoyed this, please do check me out on Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.